For protests in a peaceful manner. Many Republicans pushed back on that, but interestingly, side that
Yeah, we're both out the same week.
Jerry, you need to be on.
So
Definitely
Your
forgive
video.
it to who.
okay,
I don't know. I would have got blamed.
Oh, you are, yes, you are. You're in the middle.
I got it. It's her symptoms were delayed by a day.
There we go. Thank you.
clock, I'd like to call the work session of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners to order. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Present.
Marino, Commissioner Jazinski,
Present.
Commissioner Embry,
Present.
Commissioner Swaney,
Here.
Commissioner Engler,
Here. Here.
present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up would be approval of the agenda. We'll start out with general public comments. And then we have a presentation on the 2022 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And then under appointments to boards and commissions, we have one resignation. Brings us down to committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Finance Administration Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
And Criminal Justice and County Affairs has no business tonight. Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Public Works Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have no intergovernmental affairs, no administrative controller issues, no unfinished business. Under new business, we have several 2% grant applications that we'll review and consider this evening. And then we'll have another opportunity for general public comment and announcements and adjourn after that. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Marino.
Been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Have an agenda. General public comments. Is there anyone for general public comment? Okay, we'll move right along. Presentations and special reports. Fiscal year 2022 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and the supplementary information to financial statements. Jason Salzweedl.
Hello,
How are you, sir?
good, how are you?
Good.
Appreciate the time today. So in front of you, there's going to be 4 different documents. One of them, I believe at the top of the stack that Melissa had handed out, is the presentation that you're going to see presented here on the screen as well. There'll be a very large bound document that is going to be the county's annual comprehensive financial report. So in there is all the information for the year ended September 30th, 2022. All that information in there. We assist the county with helping prepare those financials. But all that information is really the county's information. It's the county's numbers. There's a few pages in there that provide our audit opinion on the financials. But all that information is your guys' data. There's another bound packet, a small one, That is the single audit for the same period. That contains the federal expenditures for the county for the year as well. And then the last other stapled document is a letter from us to the board that's required communications for the audit. In there, it'll outline our responsibilities as well as the county's, and then any sort of recommendations we might have going forward as well. And we'll touch base on those type items as I work through the presentation here. So as I had mentioned, the audit, there's responsibilities by management as well as responsibilities for us. So this first slide just kind of touches base on some of the key responsibilities of management for the audit of the financial statements. Management's responsible for the financial statements. They're responsible for designing, implementing, and maintaining internal controls to make sure that those financial statements are properly presented and free from misstatements. And then they're also responsible for making sure the information is available for auditors or others to ensure that that information is accurate and properly recorded. Our responsibilities for the audit is to issue an opinion on whether financial statements are properly presented in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. Plan and perform the audit to make sure that there's reasonable assurance, not absolute. We do an audit based on basically sampling and other generally accepted auditing standards. If we were to try to look at every single transaction, the audit would never get done. So we provide reasonable assurance that the numbers are accurate in the report. And then our additional responsibility is communicate significant matters related to the audit to the board and management as well. We issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. So that's basically the best opinion we can provide is the unmodified opinion for the financials. Just a couple notes. There's a couple component units that are included in the financial statements in the big bound copy there that were audited by other auditors. So we did not audit the Road Commission, the County Transportation Commission, or the Isabella County Medical Care Facility. So those were all done by other auditors, and our opinions are based solely upon those other audits. So this next slide here is a overview of the general fund, which is the main operating fund of the county. And also to note here, this information is kind of condensed. If you want to see more detailed information, at the top of the slides, there's a page reference to the big bound book of where that information is. So again, this information is as of September 30th, 2022. So at the end of the year, the county had in its general fund, again, this is just the general fund, approximately $23 million in cash. Of that was about 12.5 million, which was ARPA money that was restricted. You guys haven't spent it yet, so it's presented as restricted. Receivables of approximately 3 million. That's mostly taxes and some money due from the state, as well as lease receivables. So this year, the county implemented a new accounting standard, GASB 87, which required leases to be recorded. So you guys have a couple leases and there's receivables for those leases in there. The next section, liabilities there, typical accounts payable, accrued payroll. And the big one there, unearned revenue. That's primarily the ARPA funds. So the county has that money. You just haven't spent it yet. So it's not revenue yet, it's unearned. So it's in that liability balance there. Flows of resources. This represents receivables that are on the books that you haven't really received the funds or to have it available for expenditures. So most of that's some taxes that weren't received within 60 days. And then a deferred inflow for that lease receivable that I mentioned. And that ends you at the bottom of this section there for fund balance, which basically if you were to take all of your assets, you paid off all your liabilities, this is what the county has left, that fund balance. And it's broken up into several different categories. Non-spendable is basically prepaids, inventory, and an advance to the drain component unit. Committed, the board has set aside some funds for the sheriff's office. And then assigned is basically amounts set aside for bond payments, some other items in next year's budget, which leaves you left the unassigned balance, which is kind of what's available for general expenditures for next year. On to the next page. This is a comparison of budget to actual for the general fund. So if you look down at the table at the bottom, there's the final budget. And then the middle column is actual. And then the last column there is the over or under budget. Shows you see most of those line items are pretty close to budget. The big variance there is intergovernmental, which that primarily relates to budgeted funds of ARPA that you guys didn't end up using. So you were under budget in the revenue there because you didn't spend those ARPA funds that were in the budget originally. In the pie chart above there is kind of just a visual representation of the actual revenues for the year. The next slide is the general fund expenditures budget to actual. Again, the visual of the actual expenditures. Again, all your categories were under budget, which is good to see. I think some of the variance there was some staff turnover and vacancies throughout the year, so you were under budget in several categories in relation to that. Next slide. This kind of is taking the revenues and expenditures, putting those together, gets you to your change in fund balance. The budgeted change in fund balance was an increase of 464,000. Actual ended up being 710,000. So you had a positive variance of 246. So you increased fund balance 246,000 more than what your budget was. And at the bottom, there's just kind of some comparisons to the fund balance in relation to the expenditures for the year. So the GFOA recommends the government have approximately 2 months worth of expenditures in unassigned fund balance. So which would be about 17%. And you guys at the end of the year had 20% in unassigned fund balance. So that's good. The next slide here is a historical kind of trend of fund balance for the general fund. As you can see, it's going up. It's kind of, I guess the table looks a little bit backwards there, but it's starting in 2022. So fund balance has been increasing for the most part over the years, which is a good thing to see. The next slide. This is an overview of the MERS defined pension plan. Again, so this data is as of September 30th, and it's a historical trend for when this information started being recorded. So you'll see the first column is total pension liability. That's the total liability for the county to cover its pension plan. Plan net position, that represents the amount of assets that the county had to fund that pension liability, which gets you to a net liability of the 15.7 million. This information, again, as of September 30th. So depending on how markets have fluctuated, those numbers could be significantly different as of today, as far as the plan net position goes. Next slide. This is a comparison between what the actuaries determined. So the actuaries look at all the data for the pension and determine how much the county needs to contribute every year. As you can see on this slide here, the county has met that contribution requirement every year. So this next slide is an overview of the federal expenditures. So again, that small packet that was bound together there will outline that for the year ended September 30th, 2022, the county expended approximately $1.2 million in federal awards. The major program that we audited for the single audit was the child support enforcement grant. And we issued an unmodified opinion on compliance in relation to federal programs. So again, that's the best opinion that we can provide for the county. So as we're working through the audit, there might be instances that we come across opportunities to strengthen internal controls. During this year, there was some audit adjustments that were identified to correct year imbalances based on some of the support that we reviewed. We basically have three different options of what type of internal control issue it is, whether it be a material weakness, a significant deficiency, or an other matter. Material weakness would be the highest level of internal control issue, being that if it was a material weakness, it's reasonably possible that there could be a material misstatement in the financial statements. Significant deficiency is less severe than a material weakness, but important enough to bring to the county's attention. And then other matters would be items that we felt was important to discuss for opportunities to strengthen internal controls. Not necessarily any huge issues, but things that could be changed that could make internal controls better at the county. So the one I have noted on the screen, we considered a significant deficiency. So there was, I believe if you look in the bound packet, the small one in the single audit report, on page 12, I believe is where that's at, would outline the audit adjustments that were identified. A few of them were, not that big. There was one that was around 400,000 to record. It was in there. It was just in an unearned account. It should have been recorded as revenue at the end of the year. So we just had proposed an adjustment to move it out of unearned into revenues, and that was posted. So all those adjustments were corrected. That's why we can provide the unmodified opinion on the financials. The next slide here, these are what we consider to be other matters. Again, so kind of that lowest level things that could strengthen internal controls for the county. These items are going to be presented in further detail in the other stapled packet that you have, not the slides, but there's a stapled letter. So if you look at the attachment A1 and A2, there'll be more detail on these items. So the first one, bank accounts. The Department of Treasury requires that the county treasurer maintain control over all bank accounts. We had noted there was an account with the district courts that the treasurer does not have signature control over. Other one, bank reconciliations. The county is, performing those reconciliations. There just doesn't appear to be a formal policy in regards to how that process should happen. So our recommendation is just to develop a process and then follow that process with those. Formal information security and vendor policy. So the county has various controls with its IT control systems. There just doesn't happen to be a formal policy in what should be occurring. There are controls around IT. There's just not a formal policy to, I guess, establish what those controls should be to verify that all those are happening. And then the vendor policy would be, there's not a policy to identify how vendors are added into the system or when they're taking out. So that would be a good thing for the county to have, to make sure someone couldn't create a fictitious vendor in the system. So there's just steps that outline how that happens, and have a formal policy for how that should occur. Last bullet point on slide 14. We'll do walkthroughs of various transactions. And one of the transactions that we did a walkthrough on, there was cash that was received in that didn't go to the bank in a timely manner. So our recommendation would just be to make sure that when cash is received, there's a timeline established on how fast that should get to the bank and that the county follows that. Next slide. There, the county had some just depreciation expense that should have been recorded in the prior year for the drains that didn't get recorded until this year. So it's just a timing issue there, just making sure that all that information is reconciled at the end of the year to ensure proper period. And then the last other matter that we had noted, there was receivables related to Lake Isabella customers that did not appear to be billed timely. So at the end of the year, there was items that should have been billed that weren't billed. Next slide I have for you is upcoming accounting pronouncements. So as I had mentioned, the county had implemented GASB 87 for leases this year. Next year, which is now, the GASB 96 is effective, which is for subscription-based information technology arrangements. It basically, GASB 87 excluded IT-related potential leases, for lack of a better way to phrase that. GASB 87 scoped them out. GASB 96 brings them in. So any sort of IT service arrangement where there could be contracts related to that, those should be recorded as a subscription-based IT arrangement. It's basically the same thing as GASB 87, but brings in IT arrangements. A good way to think about it is if the county has to pay a service for some sort of IT item, if you guys were to stop paying for that, would you still be able to use the software, or would you lose rights to it? So if you have to keep paying for it to use it, it's a good chance it's a subscription-based IT service arrangement. So that's all I have for presentation. Open to try to answer any questions if anyone has any.
One question. And I apologize, I didn't, when this came before our review at the committee, wasn't aware of this, but when I was looking at the the audit this afternoon before coming to the meeting tonight, something stuck out to me, and that is on page 35, it shows that the original budget had total revenues of $22 million and expenditures were the same amount, 22 plus. And that's the original budget. When I went back to the original budget that we adopted, the actual amount was $24,437,310. And I'm just wondering why that wouldn't have been the beginning figure for the audit. We adopted a budget of 24 plus million, but the audit cites 22 plus.
You're saying the original budget was 24 million and not like the final amended?
I'm not sure that we amended the budget.
We amended the budget maybe 4 times last year.
We amended it a number of times, but
Yeah.
I guess I'd have to go back and look at what we received for the original budget. Normally we have a procedure to tie that information out to a board resolution for that. I could definitely look into that and get back with you on that.
I appreciate that.
Make myself a note here.
I'll give you my sheet.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
On the significant deficiency, could you go into a little bit more detail? I guess my understanding from what your description was that there was an 400,000 that was put in a wrong account, or?
Yeah. So at the end of the year, when we started the audit, it was recorded in unearned revenue. So it's a liability until the county does what it needs to do to recognize it as revenue. And at the end of the year, it should have been in revenue. So it should have fallen into basically at the end of the year would close to fund balance, but it was hanging out in that liability account.
Is there a policy or procedure that we need to implement for this or?
So. Yeah, well, I guess what should have occurred, I guess, is those balance sheet accounts should all have some sort of procedure, I guess, to reconcile those to supporting documents or records at the end of the year. So if that would have occurred, it should have triggered someone to see that should have been moved over into revenue.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? I just have one, this is a comment, but the bank accounts is an issue I've seen every year since I've been on the board. They can't seem to reconcile that. And from what I hear, that's not uncommon for counties to have that, we'll call it an issue with their district courts, their district court funds.
Yeah, that would be accurate. There's some. I guess
I know they keep
all of the
working on it.
reasoning, but there is some issues with that. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just one.
Commissioner Engler.
Yes, I've been trying to understand the GASB 96. And I guess you need to it has where the IT software will not report offsetting intangible subscription assets and subscription liabilities equal to the present value of future subscription payment. So does that, if you have a 3-year contract with a vendor, you use that same amount and like the 4th year? I'm not sure what future, how you record that, or you wait to the year that actually occurs.
So what the county would do, because it's basically required to be implemented as of October 1st, 2022. You would look at what contracts are out there that meet the definition of a SPIDA is the acronym. Accountants love to have acronyms. So that subscription-based IT arrangement, you would look at what payments are left in the contract. So if it's a 3-year contract and say you have 2.5 years of payments left, you would calculate the present value of those payments as of October 1st, 2022, calculate what the present value is using a discount rate to determine what the value is as of that date. And the county has they have software that they're using to do for use for the leases. So I would imagine you should be able to use that same software to assist the county in with those calculations.
A little confusing. Yeah,
It's very confusing. So
it was a little, I didn't quite understand how they did that. So it's something new. So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
I wanted to say thank you. Really appreciate all the county staff assistance and getting this done. It's a lot of work. So I want to, say thank you to Melissa and Nicole for all their help, getting the audit done and everyone else at the county. So thank you.
Okay, with that, we will move on. We won't be having a county administrator controller report. Under appointments to boards and commissions, item A, consider accepting with regret the resignation of Shelley Smith from the Isabella County Human Rights Committee effective immediately. If anyone wants to speak to that or not. If not, we'll keep moving on to committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Our one item tonight is consider ratifying and placing on file the March 3rd, 2023 invoice list in the amount of $2,162,657.79. The March 10th, 2023 invoice list in the amount of $191,225.16. And the adjustment list dated March 16, 2023. looking at the March 3rd. Make sure I get these in the right sequence. The March 3rd invoice list. I did note at the committee meeting, we had our first payment to 44 North for our self-insured pharmacy program. And I did ask Administrator Frost whether or not that was on target to what we expected to pay by the end of the year. And she said it was a little bit high, but thought maybe it was due to the fact that the service is just beginning and that people were getting 90-day supplies of pharmaceuticals, and that would be a higher amount for that first month than we're going to have in the future. So we'll just have to watch that. And then the big dollar amounts are payments, tax disbursements by the treasurer's office to intermediate school districts and a couple of community colleges. Most of the other bills on that list are ones that we've seen before and we're probably knowledgeable of. But are there any questions on any of those lists items? Moving on then to the March 10th list. I think we've commented before about Cisco Foods being a source of supplies for the sheriff's department, where we've had Gorton Supply for so long, and we've had adjustments to make early payment to get a discount. And so the sheriff happened to be at the meeting, and so we did ask him about it, and he said that Gordon Foods apparently can't provide all the food items that they need. He cited bread, for example. So they had to find an additional supplier, and they're trying to work out an agreement similar to that we have with a early payment discount, but that hasn't been the case. So anyhow, we have two suppliers now to the food supply going to the sheriff's department. Again, other than that, I think the rest of the items are very familiar to us. Any questions on the second list, the March 10th list? Okay, then moving on to the adjustment list for those two periods. I did note when I looked at it online that there's tax settlements going out to a number of local units of government, and those are delinquent tax payments going out to townships, to the villages, to the city, which are quite sizable. And the only question I would ask is maybe if administration could check with treasurer's office to see how that's impacted the delinquent tax fund. I know that's been a kind of a issue over the years of whether we're drawing too much. Are we going to have enough to make the payments? I don't know. Can you make any comment on that, or you want to have? If you don't mind, it's just a matter of interest to me to see how we're doing on the delinquent tax fund. If we're
currently, we are settling with the units. We have two more to settle with that we haven't settled with yet. And we're finding ourselves about $100,000 short. So we have to get some more questions in order to make those final distributions for the loan. So that's where we sit as of today.
okay, so the fund is depleted right now. We're unable to make all the payments necessary. Is that okay?
Opposed to funds that are there, we're about 100.
Kind of tells me that fortunate we didn't spend the $800,000 that we had originally in the budget, because we'd been probably $900,000 short. Anyhow, I just think that's a kind of an eye opener, but I appreciate the input. Are there the rest of these are Gordon Food Service? Just a couple of minor adjustments because of errors and let's see, errors for one reason or another. We'll leave it at that. Are there any questions on any of the other items on the adjustment list? Mr. Chairman, we'll move that then to the tonight's meeting. And that completes the work of Finance Administration.
Thank you. Brings us down to Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first item is consider approving agreement between Peerless Midwest Incorporated and Isabella County for the Lake Isabella water system, well number 1 and well number 2 pump repair. Board chair to sign the same. Okay, in the 2022 budget, well number 2 pump repairs were approved, and in fiscal year 2023 budget, well number 1 pump repairs were approved. The county then advertised a request for bids for well 1 and well 2 pump in the fall of 2022 for Isabella County water supply system at Lake Isabella, number 1. As per the specifications in the RFP, which was due December 16th, 2022, one approved bid was accepted by Isabella County from Peerless Midwest Incorporated. Therefore, a contract between the two parties is the next step in moving forward to have well 2 repaired. And the reason it's a priority is because it is operating the least efficient of the 2 wells. So that's why we have the resolution. Any questions or comments?
We do have Drain Commissioner Willoughby here. If
Okay.
anyone has questions for him, or if you have anything you want to add to that.
No, he's correct. Right now, we're prioritizing well number 2. And after well number 2 is finished, we will at some point consider well number 1. In the contract, I think the last paragraph gives us the authority to designate well number 1 when we're ready for that. To do that well, but not necessarily immediately, as the funds are available. On that, we have ARPA money for well number 2. And then taking it out for the balance and well number 1.
Okay. Thank you. Next item, right?
Second item, consider approving the purchase of a MIT 6,000 pound capacity LP cushion air forklift from Morrison Industries Incorporated company for the Isabel County Material Recovery Facility, $34,829.70, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. We have Jake Portman.
Good afternoon. As we've talked about in the past, one of the things that I am trying to do with the facility is we're trying to roll the equipment on about a 5-year plan. The high-low trucks, the skidster, it makes more sense, and we're going to talk about that one next, and I'll explain on that one. The high-low has reached that 5-year mark, and we're looking to try and replace that high-low. We've gotten a couple of quotes from 2 different places, as you can see, Morrison Industrial and Cisco on the pricings on it. The balance that's left, there's a minimal trade is all we are ending up with out of the high-low, because of the fact that it's reached its end of life cycle, so to speak. There's still some use left of it by all means, because we do everything we can to be able to make sure that we're maintaining it the way that it should. But it's at any rate, that leaves us an additional $39,824.78. That amount of money would come out of the equipment reserve, which we have $350,000 in equipment reserve in the through the facility. So, any questions?
I'd just say that over the years, I've used Morris Industries. Top notch. You call them, they're there, they take care of you, and this is what we really need out there. a thumbs up there.
Okay, that will be on tonight's, right. Okay, our next item. Consider approving the purchase of a New Holland L318G skid loader from Allen's Equipment in Beale City for the Isabella County Material Recovery Facility in the amount of $23,850 and authorize the board chair to sign the same. What's the background on this, sir?
Yeah, like I touched on the, in a previous, the skid steer, what it comes down to on that, on value for trade-in is the amount of hours. We run close to the 1,500 hours a year on that skid steer. At that 1,500 hour mark, that realistically getting us back into this now by purchasing a new one, what that will do is that will put us that next year when I come back to you again for another skid steer, we will get realistically, it will cost us about $7,000, maybe $8,000 at the most, because of the trade-in value will be extremely enhanced. We're at the second year on this skid steer right now. That's why we've got some reduction in the amount of money that we're getting on trade, still leaving us a $23,000 trade or somewhere in that area. It just makes more sense for the amount of hours that we run, that we roll that piece of equipment once a year to keep that trade-in value at its highest amount. What that does for companies like Allen's Equipment, whether it's Allen's, whether it's Hudson, whether it's McConnell's, what that does is that gives them a used piece of equipment that is very low hours that they can turn around and resell to farmers that are looking for a reduction in the price on a new equipment. It gives them equipment that they can get in stock, get it out. They know they're going to get it back in a year, or they're hoping to be able to get it back in a year and roll it back out again and be able to make some money on it by trading it in. So it gives us a brand new skid steer that then stays under warranty, keeping expenses down at the absolute most for us. So.
Any questions or comments on the item?
What's the timeline again on receiving this?
The high-low is something that Morrison, realistically, they, on the high-low, they are looking that they may be able to have one in 6 weeks. Ellen's Equipment is telling me that they would hope that they can have one by August. So that's the other part of that, of all of this, that because timelines on equipment is just, it continues to stretch. I just looking at doing some other things, got a quote on a piece of equipment for in the facility. It's almost to have it's the baler. I'm working with something on the tribe, and it's almost $700,000, 66 weeks.
Wow.
And other things, other machinery within the facility for recycling, they're talking 2 years.
This does allow us to lock that price.
It does. Yeah. With a signed contract tonight that will lock everything in and put everything in motion so that it is locked, and we will get that at the price, no matter what our hours increase to. So.
Go ahead.
Oh, just because we've had some experience with skid loaders before. About 2 years, if you're running, we used to run ours about 50 hours a week. And the problem with those things is they're so hard to work on, and the labor just goes real crazy. So once they start breaking down, it'll really part you to death, because they're just impossible to work on. You almost have to take the New Hollands, they actually flip it up to get to the engine. But I have a special set of wrench just for that piece of equipment because everything's so tight.
And there's, with so many different types of skid steers, John Deere has, they have made some changes to it so that it's a little bit more exposable, so to speak, engine to be able to work on, but all of them they are difficult to get in and work on. If the engine's not, if there's not so much issue on the engines, then it becomes issues working on the pumps, the hydraulic driven, the wheels and everything is being hydraulic driven or chain driven. And it's to get to that stuff is difficult. So.
Any more? Go ahead.
Forgive me, my brain is not working at optimal conditions right now, but trying to understand we're gonna be paying 23,850 for the skid steer, and we're looking at basically a cost of $7,000 or $8,000 for the use of it for a year,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, so and that's expecting that we'll see a similar cost for the next.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what the hope is. And that's, we know there's going to be increased in costs.
Right,
But that's why I say in that $7,000-8,000 range.
yeah. My question wasn't necessarily it was mostly just to simplify it for me, so.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Just a comment, but having a brand new piece of equipment, I would think prevent any unnecessary shutdowns. And you don't want to have shutdowns in that facility.
That it is critical. It really puts us in a bind when we have issues with it. We can make do for a day or so. But most of the time, what we end up doing is we end up having to lease something or another. But by using somebody like Allen's or Hudson, either of them have been very good about making sure that if our skid steer goes down, that they can get us one usually within a day, get it in. They keep the expense at a very minimal when it comes to us having to lease a piece of equipment.
It seems like covers a lot of territory. That's a good deal. Go ahead.
Mr. Engler.
Just because it's brand new doesn't mean it breaks down. If it's mechanical, it will break. I've been there. Yeah. There's no guarantees on equipment, so.
No, that there is not. That's the reasoning for warranties and trying to keep it within warranty. So.
Right. Okay, that being the case, that will be on the agenda this evening, and that completes the work of the Human Resources and Public Works Committee, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have no intergovernmental affairs, no administrator controller issues, no unfinished business. Under new business, we have several 2% requests, and we'll go through each one at a time. The first one, I can speak to that. The administration office requesting $80,000 for the feasibility study for an Isabella County secure juvenile residential resource facility. We had a feasibility study done on that building, the court, and the administration building in 2016 by Integrated Architecture. They found with that jail building that the mechanical systems, the electrical systems, and the plumbing were in a serious state of decay. Those systems would need total replacement to make that building functional. The structure of it, however, is still solid. It's a masonry building. It's not going anywhere. And it's still a public resource. And originally, when we talked about building a new sheriff's office jail facility, we talked about tearing that down, putting more parking there or something. It turns out with the USDA loan, we can only use those USDA funds in the township because it's a rural development loan that we got at 2 1/8% for that new facility, but it can't be used on a building here in the city. So got us thinking about what could we do with it besides just tear it down. I know you talk to anybody in law enforcement or mental health, and they'll tell you, we need a place for juveniles. We need placement. Right now, a lot of them are sent to Highfields, which is down by Jackson, or I guess to the UP, or even out of state. If they can find a place, if they can find beds for them. Oftentimes there aren't beds. And I know at one point, we were looking at the child care fund and it was doing fairly well. We thought, geez, we're doing a good job with the child care fund. We're not spending money. And the court administrator told us, well, that's because there's nowhere to put some of these juveniles. So there's a huge need. Probably all over the country, but certainly in Michigan, for a juvenile residential facility like this. So we're asking the tribe for $80,000 to do a feasibility study with a 20% match from the county. And that's an educated guess on what it will cost. We won't know for certain until we put out an RFP, get some bids on it. But, see where that goes. Yes, sir.
I kind of support this and I will support it in the voting when we kind of give our numerical score. But the only thing that I'm aware of because of participation in the Northern Michigan Counties Association, Clare County is planning to have a juvenile detention facility. And we don't know what they're planning. It'd be nice to not only do this study to find out what the costs are, but to find out what our neighboring county is planning on doing. Are they going to do something that's going to be adequate, that maybe would meet our needs? Maybe we can work regionally. I think it's something that's important to do, if nothing more than just to give respect to our adjoining county to see if we can work together on this. And other than that, the only other thing that was mentioned is 17-year-olds are no longer adults in prison anymore. That's another group of teenagers that we have to deal with. And when you don't have the beds and you don't have the special facilities, it's really going to be a burden. I suspect that the state's going to step up and provide some grant funding. So this might put us at the head of the line if we do this study for grants. But it's not only the facility. The study, I think, is going to be taking a look at what does it cost to operate, because you can't just have the building. You're going to have mental health professionals. You're going to have the medical professionals. You're going to have a cadre of staff that's going to be involved with it. So it's complex beyond my understanding. So hopefully the study, if it gets funded by the tribe, will bring some clarity to it.
Good comments. The other part of that, we talked about this in committee a little bit, is that currently some of these juveniles are sent like to Jackson County or to the UP, and they're removed from the only support they might have here, their family. And I'm sure that some of those families are not able to make a trip down to be with those kids. So keeping them here will be a great advantage. And also, if it's our facility, then we have control over the programming and that. So any other comments on that? Okay, the next one is Commission on Aging requesting $555,790 for programs and services. And Jennifer Crawford is here to.
Hello there.
Hi.
So before you, this is our application that we've submitted from Commission on Aging. This is a collaborative effort from all of the managers and myself. So the application does cover every program and service that we do provide here at Commission on Aging. When we do make our request, if we're fortunate enough to receive funding, which we've been beyond blessed to receive the amount we have received over the years, just under 10 million since 1995. All of the funds go directly to our programs and services. We don't use any of those for administrative costs here at Commission on Aging. So what you see, the application we submit this spring will be the exact same one that we do submit again this fall. And that was a request from the tribe many years ago for the Commission on Aging to do it that way. So.
Very good. The tribe's been very generous.
Yes.
To us
Incredibly.
in many regards, but especially with the Commission on Aging.
Yes, very much so.
Any comments, questions?
This is a win-win.
More than generous and these programs are they do wonders for the community.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jen.
Thank you.
All right, up next, emergency management requesting $103,036 for the automated external defibrillator AED project Heart Saver, and Helen Lee, our emergency manager, is here. Walk us through this one.
Sure. Yes, so we're excited about this AED Heart Saver proposal. I just want to read the problem statement. You may have read it already, but it's very impactful. Before you complete reading this proposal, in all likelihood, a sudden cardiac arrest has occurred somewhere in the United States at the rate of 1 SCA every 1.6 minutes. So approximately 350,000 cardiac arrests happen outside of the hospital in the US annually. Currently, about 9 of 10 people who have cardiac arrests outside the hospital die. The chances of severe brain damage start to occur just after 4 minutes. And without defibrillation, the chances of survival are almost 0% after 10 minutes. 50% of sudden cardiac arrests are witnessed. It's approximate number, 50%, meaning there is a chance we can save a life. So the overview being that we would, with this funding of $103,000 and 396, I believe it is. No, sorry, 103,036. We would be able to equip businesses in the county with 100 of those AEDs, and it would be in recurring the 3 years proposed to the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, 2% funding. So, maybe some of us know someone who's had an AED used on them, or maybe you've had to go run to get one. The technology is pretty amazing. I've been learning a lot in the last 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, about some of the newest technology of the various AED companies that allow dispatch to recognize where that AED is being set off. And those that have the AED also can be aware of their surroundings, of where there might be somebody in sudden cardiac arrest, and they could utilize that mobily. So we saw some demonstrations and have had some dialogue with various companies that sell the AEDs. So that's kind of an exciting proposal. You can see what we have put in the grant for intern training, getting kind of analyzing what the data is locally and moving forward. But that would happen, of course, if we were to get the funding, then we would start doing all that work. So if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to try to field those.
I don't have a question, just a statement of personal experience. This year in January, a personal friend of mine I was playing hockey with collapsed on the ice. And we were able to utilize the automatic external defibrillator there then to get some vitals and return that information to dispatch. At the time, he had a stroke, which we didn't know what was going on at the time on the ice. But certainly the AED helped us give additional information to dispatch, which was on, brought into emergency care. So it was certainly very useful on the ice at that time. So they do have them at Maury Courts and Martin Ice Arena, and it has been used.
You mentioned that training would be part of that, because I know it's important to train the people that would use it. And the training would be provided by.
That all has to be figured out as far as how that process would happen and who would be responsible for it. We would have a small group of committee that would look at businesses that are requesting an AED or filling out the application form. So that all has to be worked out and designed.
Okay, and then monitoring the equipment to make sure it's continues to be functional, that would be part of the business's responsibility?
Yes, ideally, that's what we would want them to keep that piece of equipment up and, updated or upgraded or whatever the right terminology is for that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. And the second proposal that we have that you see is an $8,000. I think Mark wants to keep me busy because that keeps it tied in with exercises and training and then feeding individuals that are part of this. So community members and first responders. Enhancement tools such as ID badges and signage, it costs a lot to make badges. And helping control the exercise with mini walkie-talkies. And if you've ever seen those noisemakers that are used, if you're doing, say, an active shooter training or a run, hide, fight training. So it would involve training, but the training will only go so far if you can't implement your skills that you learned at that training. So that's why the exercising is so important. So we've got it broken up with the $4,000 for the actual exercises and training, and then $4,000 for our supplies and our enhancement tools that go along with that. So, yeah, that would be anything from chemical exposure. I mean, there's a variety of different exercises that we would determine are the highest priority for emergency management if we were to get this award. So. Any questions on that, Grant?
When I first read that, right away, I thought exercise equipment, but it's not exercise equipment, is it?
Right. Might not be a
Gotcha.
bad idea. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the Humane Animal Treatment Society requesting $61,207 for animal shelter kennel renovation. And it looks like we have someone from HATS online.
Hi, can you hear me?
Barely.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. All right. So we are requesting $61,207 to complete our dog kennel renovation. So our main dog kennel is about 20 years old and has seen the wear and tear of approximately 20,000 dogs in the last 20 years. So we have chain link gates that are long overdue for replacing. We've been having a lot of issues with latches just breaking off with no notice, dogs getting loose. That can lead, unfortunately, to things like dog fights, animals being injured, staff being injured. Our pulley systems for opening and closing the divider doors within the kennels are hardly usable at this point. They get stuck all of the time. So for many reasons, this project is very much needed just for daily functioning of housing dogs at our facility. Thankfully, we had a large bequest last year that allowed us to begin the project and do half of the kennels. We weren't able to actually close the entire kennel to even do the project at once. So we plan to do it half and half. So we have new glass and stainless steel doors on half of the kennels, and then there are still 18 remaining that need replacement. The new doors have been working wonderfully. The latches work great. The pulley systems work great, and we haven't had any loose dogs or injuries since they've been installed on those kennels. So they are serving their purpose. Does anybody have any questions?
Just a comment, but this all makes good sense to me. I mean, you don't want nervous, agitated animals getting loose in the facility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, next up would be Isabel Conservation District requesting $165,000 for the septic system cost share program, and Commissioner Engler.
Yes, I'm going to take off my commissioner hat and put on my conservation district hat just for a little bit. This is a program that's been developed for a couple of years now. We developed it for the point of sale. The conservation district is only the administrative body. There's a septic committee, which I did not name that, so I was always trying to come up with a different, better name, but it's simple and everybody understands what it is, so it works out. But along with the conservation,
That as well.
yeah, just as long as you don't refer to me as a sewer expert, and then we'll be all right. So, along with the conservation district, the Chippewa Indian Tribe Environmental Department's part of the committee, the Central Michigan Department of Health and the Michigan Department of Environmental, Great Lakes and Energy, or EGLE, are all part of the committee. It was set up, initially it was set up for point source pollution, which is water basically going directly into it. We got agreement from some of the grant providers to do non-point, which is basically seepage or doesn't go directly in, but will end up into the water supply. So you can apply for both point source and non-point source. So some of the requirements or that you have to do if you want to do for it is you have to get a contract, an application. You get the permit is permitted from the Central Michigan Community Health Department. They're responsible. You're responsible for their permit cost. You have to have an inspection from the health department and 3 bids from contractors. And what the committee will do is they'll agree to pay up to 75% of the cost, up to $15,000. It's been very popular. Unfortunately, if we had more money, could do a little more. So some of the restrictions that probably would not get is if you're just going to sell your house. Because there's so many requests, it's more for updating systems that need it. But if it's low priority, there's a point system that goes in there. So anyways, in 2021, the Saginaw Indian Tribe received $100,000 from the EPA. These were passed on to the committee to use, so that combined with 2% funding. There was 19 landowners, cost share funding averaging about $10,000 a piece. This year's the EPA funding was not available, so the program will be down a little bit. It's not an advertised program. We don't need to advertise it. So we have more takers than we need to do it. So it's usually through word of mouth, or else when the health department gets involved, there's some people that have issues or can't afford to it. So it's a start, and I think they're doing good work with it. During the years 2018 to 21, 28 homes were identified to be discharging untreated wastewaters to the stream ditches or field tiles. That was picked up through the county's time of transfer program. So addressing these problems was approximately 3,066,000 gallons to 590,000 gallons that were diverted from entering into the bodies of water. So at least we're keeping that much out of there. In 21, 5 homes were identified to be discharging, representing about 550,000 gallons to 900,000 gallons of wastewater. In addition, 50 homes were identified to have raw sewage surfacing backup, damaging septic tanks. So there's definitely a need. So one of the things the district is doing right now is that we've working with the Chippewa River Watershed Alliance. It's made up about 25 county agencies to develop the watershed management plan. So once that happens, it'll open up a lot more grant opportunities for water quality. So I guess if you have any questions, that's just a quick update of what's going on there. But
I just have a comment. I remember when we implemented the time of transfer program with the health department, and it's such an important issue to maintain the water quality, and I'm really impressed with the quantities of gallons diverted that you mentioned. So I'm so happy this is a program. I know when you have to do it as a house owner, or it's really could be kind of expensive. So I think this program is very, very valuable, and I'm so glad that it's going on.
Well, a lot of the problems we start out with is these are a lot of the older homes, and as some of it's the older population because they've been in their houses and they might not have the money to upgrade it. A lot of the newer houses, they've met higher standards, but it's the old houses and people that's been in their homes for 30, 40 years, they don't want to leave it or sell it. So this is an opportunity for them to get some cost share, and that's a lot of systems are, they run up to some of the highest ones we've seen was 20,000. So it does help. So
These funds will be available to households throughout the county.
throughout the county, correct? Yes. And that the process starts with the health department. So application.
Commercial properties would also be eligible besides private residential or
Commercial properties would not.
like rentals.
No, well, if we had more money, they would be considered, but right now we're targeting, like I said, houses for sales, even though some of them need it, but because there's going to be a sale on there, it's a point system and priorities. And right now they're trying to identify the ones that need it the most. So it could be expanded if we had more money to do those properties, but right now, no, that you could make an application, but it'd be a low priority list. So I said, if we were a different world, we had a lot of money, and then you could expand the program to do more of them. But right now you're trying to focus where the money does the most good. So.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yeah. So yesterday we had the E. coli ad hoc meeting and with the Central Michigan Health Department, and the Chippewa Tribe water quality specialist was here. And obviously the point of sale law that was put into place for the county has been vital and very, very important and improving our water quality. And of course, so septic systems have to be repaired before they can be transferred point of sale. And so these monies, we're kind of hitting these zones where families that can't quite afford it, and therefore for years and years don't want to think about it or talk about it. Kind of, if you don't talk about it, it doesn't exist, and they just keep on doing it. But they know that their wastewater is going directly into, a tributary that's going into the Chippewa or the Salt River or whatever. And we need to have more of these conversations, and we need to have a lot more money. And hopefully in next coming years, we're going to be able to get more grants, like once we get the Chippewa watershed recognized federally, and we'll really be able to make huge strides in reducing the E. coli and the human waste in the watershed right now. This 2% funding is very important right now to get us started this next few years.
Okay. All right, thank you, Commissioner Engler. Up next is the Materials Recovery Facility requesting $150,000 for the recycling program.
All right. I love to be able to get back up here. Now, this is, we are kind of doing mirroring what Jen is doing from the Commission on Aging. We are doing obviously a spring and a fall request for spring and fall, $150,000 each of them for a $300,000 total. The money to be used within equipment and building repair and maintenance within the facility. We've been extremely fortunate with the Saginaw Chippewa Tribe, as well as Jen has. The grant that we're working on, I think I told them that we're over $1 million within the last I think 10 years that I've been here or a little over, that we've received from them. So they've been very supportive of the recycling facility, and are continuing to work with us to try and do more things as well. So.
Commissioner Jazinski.
I kind of read the report on the, the looking at the future of the MRF and the status of the current MRF as being equipment really being aged and obsolete. So the tribe's been really good to the program, and it's nice to have some money. You don't know what's going to break down, but there's a potential for a lot of issues that can disrupt a very valuable program. So I'm going to be very supportive of this one.
Yeah, it's been really nice. That's kind of goes along with the grant that I'm working with on with the tribe. The tribe right now has the ability to apply for, I think it's $1.5 million in a Swiffer grant through the EPA. And they're doing a collaborative effort with me on buying, they're needing some things on a reservation. The money that they're not going to use up to that, I think theirs is around 300,000, 350. The rest of that, they are working with me to be able to buy possibilities of buying equipment that could go into the facility for upgrades. So.
Seems like a good time to mention that the tribe will be part of that ad hoc committee. They'll have a seat at the table as we dive into that feasibility report and start talking about the future of that facility. So.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about the ad hoc committee, the formation of that. It really has, we've looked to be able to put as many people as far as our surrounding community, CMU, Union Township, the city, tribal government, businesses, things of that nature, that we're looking to have on that ad hoc committee. That way we get a completely generalized look at the facility itself. So.
Yep. I'm excited about it. Commissioner Engler.
Yeah, and I believe that we have a representative from Eagle on the committee that's committed, which is going to be extremely helpful getting through the regulations and accessing funds. So for them to send representatives is important. So.
Anything else? Any questions for Jake? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next one is Sheriff's Office requesting $458,409.25 for law enforcement data interoperability. And I believe we have Sheriff Maine online with us.
Hello.
I see him.
Can you hear me, Commissioner?
Barely.
Barely. I'll talk up a little bit. How's that?
I hear you a little better.
A little better?
Yep.
All right. So I'll make it real quick here, and I appreciate it. I apologize. I'm not in person. I got some stuff going on, but this is the same exact request almost from last round. So this is the shared data system, records management system for the police and law enforcement agencies that the city of Mount Pleasant, CMU, are joining on. It includes the CAD system that Mark Griffiths will be using at the dispatch center. One of the reasons I think probably it didn't go through last time was there was a lot of talk at the tribe about tribal police department coming on board. I'm happy to say that was probably a good hold and a good wait. They are joining us. They're coming on board with the records management system. They're also going to be a hub off from the dispatch center. And really what that means is a 911 call comes into central dispatch and it's a tribal related matter or a CMU related matter. There's no calling out saying, okay, this is what we got, regurgitating all that information. Tribal dispatch or CMU dispatch or the officers or whoever just pick it up right from there and they take it from there. They see the exact same stuff. We can share information back and forth. We can see what tribal officers are doing so that's a safety issue. So if we know they're on a traffic stop around the corner, we can drive drive by and check on them. Right now, we can't see them when they're doing that kind of stuff. So it really was a good way to get them on board. I think it's going to be a really robust system. It's going to be a lot of interoperability. If one center goes down, the other center can pick them right up. Dispatchers can come over and so forth. It's nice because although it's a shared system, we all have our silos. So if we don't want to share the report, we just want to share that there's something there, we can do that. So it's all kinds of ability to kind of tweak that to what each agency needs. So with that being said, the actual number that's on the agenda is a little deceiving. I'd had lots of conversations since the last 2% round, and when we weren't successful, and in how they thought maybe it should come through, some conversations and so forth. So we are still doing a match, quite a large match actually. So our local match is 232,619, and that comes from the monies, the funds that Mark Griffiths already had allocated for the CAD program. That comes from funds from Mount Pleasant Police Department and Central Michigan University. So our total request ask is 225,810. And in those conversations at the round table and different things with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe, they indicated, again, I think it's a common theme you've heard tonight, to break that disbursement up to a spring and fall. So we have requested to do that. So that brings down our total request to about 112,905 in the spring and the fall. So the number comes drastically down, and maybe it's a little workable because they get lots and lots of requests. Obviously, it's a great program. So they get a lot of requests. So this hopefully will help and get us all on the same page. You folks had scored this at a high priority last time, and I'm hoping you do again this time. This interaction between law enforcement and the CADs and the dispatch centers working together is crucial for officer safety, for responding to calls, for keeping people safe, to seeing, hey, this person was a suspect in this case, and now we have him in our case. And just, there's so many things that are going to come with this software to help our community. It's just, it's a really good thing that we're moving forward. And just, again, to recap, the city of Clare has the same system, and we share already with them. Shepherd Police Department and the Sheriff's Office are on this, so we all share. And then we all share with all the agencies in Gratiot County. So we have a lot of data coming into that system for people. So all the way from Clare City, all the way through Gratiot County will be on this system that shares all of this data, all of this information. The one final piece of the puzzle is the Carpel, which is the prosecutor's software. We are working on that connection piece right now. So when those reports are done, the deputies or police officers or whoever's writing that report, they go to submit. It submits it to the prosecutor electronically. On the prosecutor side, they say an email comes up and says, sheriff has sent me a report. They click onto it, said, yep, we're going to take it. They accept it. It populates their entire system, cutting down the workload on their end, but it also cuts down the errors, so retyping stuff and having to rescan stuff, and it really should streamline from cradle to grave this process. So we are hopeful that maybe the tribe will look at this favorably and we'll move forward.
Any questions?
Just one for the sheriff. Sheriff, glad to see the tribal join in with it to be on the same system, but so they're applying with the group totally on that. I'm just kind of confused. Are they like a separate entity from the 2% funding then?
So, typically they my understanding, they cannot benefit from it, but because it's a joint effort to bring everybody onto the same platform, that's an allowable request.
Okay.
If they couldn't put in a request for themselves, but in this case, because it's a joint, we're sharing, we're doing a mutual aid basically of all this data. They would be willing to do that. So their number is included in that final number to bring them online for their CAD and their records management.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Sheriff.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so we will motion at tonight's session. And we certainly do appreciate the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe and the whole 2% process. It's all very interesting process that they have.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
are we going to have a score?
We are.
Okay.
We'll do that between meetings. We kind of prioritize each request. And then, okay, yep, we'll do that between meetings. So moving on, general public comment. Is there anyone for general public comment?
Hi there, Melissa Franquist, accountant. I just wanted to come up here and answer Commissioner Jalazinski's question, if it might help. So no one's losing sleep because you all lose sleep over the audit, right? Commissioner Jalazinski, on page 36 that you were looking at, the expenditures, you have very good eyes. The expenditures are comprised of total expenditures and our transfers out. Remember, we have two, they're all expenditures, but the audit breaks them out separately. So when you add the 22 million and the 1.6 million, that is your 24 that you are referring to. Same with revenues. If you look at revenues plus our transfers in, it gets you your total there too. So I just wanted to mention that again, so no one is losing sleep over over the audit. And the final budget as well does include all of the amendments that are done throughout the year. You are correct on that. So if you look at what you kind of had mentioned before, the 1.8 of transfers in is now down to about $1 million with not taking out the 800 for the DTR. So we made that amendment, if you remember, throughout the year. And so it is reflected there. So I just wanted to see if I could help out with that and not leave everyone wondering for the rest of the night.
My mind is at peace. Thank you.
You can get some sleep tonight.
We can thank you. We'll all sleep well tonight.
Yes.
No, seriously though, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Anyone else for general public comment? Seeing none, we will move on. Announcements. Commissioners, anyone have any announcements? I have a couple. As Commissioner Swaney mentioned, we had our E. coli ad hoc committee meeting yesterday. Decided that for now, maybe once a year is appropriate for that committee. We don't have any big action items that we're contemplating. Basically getting information from the tribe, from Corinne Foss, their water quality specialist, who is in charge of the water testing that they do. And she presented yesterday. She was fantastic, gave us all kinds of information on the testing that they do. A couple guys from the health department were there, and we learned about that assistance program, helped numerous people that may not have been able to afford upgrades to their system. It's really alarming how much discharge can come from one failed system. So and so important to be able to identify those and fix those problems. But anyway, and we started an email list for some of the folks that were there, so that as we get information, we can move that along to folks so that we don't have to necessarily have another meeting just to disseminate little bits of information. So it was very good. The other thing I have, the MAC Legislative Conference is coming up April 24th through April 26th. If anyone's interested in that, let Jessica know. She will register you for that. Some real good breakout sessions. coming up for that. Trial court funding. The impact of electrical vehicle adoption on road funding. Land banks. Opiate funding from the national settlement. Robert's rules, juvenile justice reform and funding. So lots of good, lot of interesting stuff there that's pertinent to what we're currently working on. So like I say, let Jessica know if you're interested in attending that. The other thing I have is Isabella County Restoration House has their Party for a Purpose coming up April 15th. And it's a fantastic event that they had a couple of years and then COVID kind of shut it down for a couple of years and now they're going to do it again. So it's a lot of fun. It's a paddle auction. It's kind of a I don't know, it's a different kind of auction, but you get a paddle with a number on it. When you want to bid on something, you throw, everybody throws a quarter in and but it's fun and they have a light dinner. Tickets are $30. I've got several flyers here for that. So they're still trying to sell tickets for that. It's a Party for a Purpose, Saturday, April 15th. So take one of these if you're interested in that, and that's all I have. Any other announcements? And seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are adjourned at 5:30. Absolutely, yeah, take a couple. I got a bunch if you got someone else.